Hey everybody, Qroo here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the verb hacer, to make, to translate sentences like these. Her dedication makes everyone trust her. My neighbors make their kids take out the garbage every night. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because I did a recent video about the same topic, but I didn't touch on one particular aspect of it well enough, so, it resulted in a lot of questions and comments. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to scrap it and film it over and answer those things, all right? So that's what this is. So today I'm going to be teaching you two constructions. The first one is arguably the most difficult because it does not mirror our English. We love when things mirror our English, right? They're much easier to learn. This isn't one of those. Take a look at this English sentence. Her dedication makes everyone trust her. Now in English, we have the subject of the sentence that's making the object of the sentence do something. Our subject is her dedication and the object is everyone. Well, in Spanish, our first construction is nothing like that. I find it easiest to break complex parts of Spanish down into a simple pattern or formula that you can follow so you can say whatever you want and create grammatically correct sentences, all right? Even sentences you may never have seen or heard before, if you're following the pattern, you're going to nail it. So this is our formula. We have subject number one, and that's the person or thing that's making subject number two in our formula, do something or not do something. We have the verb hacer, to make, and that's going to be conjugated to agree with subject number one. Then we have the word que, which is breaking up our two clauses. Our second clause, our object from English is going to become the subject of the second clause. And that means it's going to have a conjugated verb. And that verb is going to be conjugated in the subjunctive mood. That's very important. That's why it says it right in the formula, subjunctive. Let's see what that looks like. Su dedicación hace que todos confíen en ella. That's what it looks like. Literally, her dedication makes that everyone confides in her, trusts her. And in that second clause, right, todos is the subject of the second clause. We could have had todo el mundo for everyone. I chose todos. And our verb there is confiar. That's the infinitive, confiar. But it is conjugated in the subjunctive mood, confíen. Why is it in the subjunctive? Because the formula says it's in the subjunctive. Don't overthink it, folks. Just learn the formula and apply it. And using that formula, translate this sentence. My neighbors make their kids take out the garbage every night. Now, if you don't know all the vocabulary used, that's okay. I just want you to understand the structure. Do the best you can. Hoping this thing holds out. Mis vecinos hacen que sus hijos saquen la basura todas las noches, right? We have two clauses separated by que. The first one is mis vecinos hacen. My neighbors make. We have que. It's like make that. Sus hijos sacan la basura. Their kids take out the garbage. Our verb there is sacar, sacar, and it's conjugated in the subjunctive. If you're not familiar with the subjunctive, just think of it as a different set of conjugations that are triggered by certain grammatical constructions, like this. That's why I call them subjunctive triggers. Now, I have a playlist of subjunctive triggers on my main YouTube channel. You can find it under playlists. I also cover them in detail in my private learning group called the Qroo Spanish Crew. When I say it's private, it just means it's a paid learning group. I do a lot of things over there, so if you really want to boost your Spanish, you might want to check it out. You'll find a link to it in the description section of this video. All right, you want to translate another one? Of course you do. Even if you said no, I'm going with yes. The rain makes the plants grow faster. Ready? La lluvia hace que las plantas crezcan más rápido. Our verb in the second clause is crecer, to grow, and it's in the subjunctive. Crezcan, crezcan. You want one that's a little bit harder? And some of you are like, not really, Paul. Try this one. The circumstances made me worry about the future. This is past tense, so it's already a little bit more challenging. Not sure how much time you need. Probably quite a bit. All right, let's go ahead and do it. Las circunstancias hicieron que me preocupara por el futuro. Did you get that? The circumstances made that, so we have hicieron, that's in the preterite, and the verb we're using in the second clause is preocuparse, preocuparse, but we had to do it in the imperfect subjunctive, or past subjunctive, because we needed tense agreement, right? But it's still following that formula. That's why, little formulas and patterns, that's the way to go, folks, all right? If you've been learning subjunctive triggers from that playlist that I mentioned, this pattern is going to look very familiar because so many of those verbs are going to follow it. A great example is querer, to want. It's one of the first triggers I show. I want you to go to the store. See, we have a subject, I, wanting the object, you, to do something. But we're going to plug it into this formula. Subject number 1, querer que. Subject number 2, subjunctive. Same thing. Quiero que vayas a la tienda. Quiero que vayas a la tienda. And vayas is in the subjunctive. It comes from the verb ir, to go. Now, if you didn't know that particular formula, you may come up with something like te quiero ir a la tienda. I've heard beginning Spanish students and even some intermediates folks come up with that because they're not familiar with the subjunctive or this particular pattern. That's not Spanish, folks. That is not even an option. When you're dealing with verbs like querer, I want that something happens, you've got one option, and that's that construction I just showed you, which is very similar to the first construction I've showed you with hacer. And I said first construction. And that's because hacer is a little bit different. With hacer, we actually have another construction we can use that is more similar to English. Take a look at this sentence. My friend made me go to the store. Now I can translate this using that first construction, and I'd get something like, mi amigo hizo que fuera a la tienda. Or I could use our second construction I'm about to show you, and I'd get this. Mi amigo me hizo ir a la tienda. Much, much easier, right? And more similar to English. I'm back to a subject, making an object do something. And I'm not having to conjugate anything into the subjunctive. I'm just dropping in infinitives. That's the unconjugated verb. So we have ir a la tienda. I'm just popping that in. So this is our second construction. Here's the formula. We have a subject plus a direct or indirect object pronoun. I'm going to be explaining that in detail later in the video. Our verb hacer, which is controlled by the subject. And we're just dropping in verbs in the infinitive. For now, we're only going to focus on these object pronouns. Me, which is me, te, which is you, informal, nos, us, and for you folks who are studying European Spanish and are using vosotros, os. That's it. That's the only ones. There are two reasons why we're going to focus on these for now. The first one is that they are the same whether they are direct or indirect object pronouns. They're identical. So we don't even have to talk about that aspect. The other thing is it's always clear who you're talking about. Me is always me. Te is always you. Nos is always us. All right, translate this one. My friend made me go to the store. And you should get this right away because I just did it. Mi amigo me hizo ir a la tienda. My friend made you go to the store. The informal you. Mi amigo te hizo ir a la tienda. My friend made us go to the store. Mi amigo nos hizo ir a la tienda, right? All we're doing is swapping that object pronoun. Super easy. So that probably came out just like that. Let's try another one. The boss makes us work Saturdays. A little scratchy there. You ready? El jefe nos hace trabajar los sábados. El jefe nos hace trabajar los sábados. Now, if we want to translate that using construction number 1, we can. It's our choice. I don't know why we would with that particular one, but let's say we want to. Go ahead and try that. You ready? El jefe hace que trabajemos los sábados. See, it's trabajemos. It's in the subjunctive. Why? Because that's a formula. We're not questioning it. It just is. Chances are that took you a little bit longer to translate just because it is more complex, right? So when it comes to me, te, nos, or if you're studying European Spanish, os, that second construction is our go-to one, right? Go ahead and try this one. The boss makes me work Saturdays. El jefe me hace trabajar los sábados. Now by this point in the video, you might be wondering why I even showed you that first construction, because the second one is just so much easier. Well, you can't give up on that first one because there's going to be times when that's the construction you're going to want to choose, especially in sentences where a third party is actually named. It's going to be clearer if you use that construction. The boss makes Juan and Maria work Saturdays. This is good for construction number 1. In fact, go ahead and do that one. You ready? El jefe hace que Juan y María trabajen los sábados. Did you get that? Did you remember the subjunctive? Now that's a very natural way to translate that particular sentence. It is possible to do it using the second construction, but I'm not even going to go down that road because it gets a little clumsy and cluttery. And I just want you to remember construction number 1 and construction number 2, and to keep things simple, you know. I want you to be able to actually use this in a conversation and not have to think about it so hard. Take a look at this sentence. The professor makes the students learn something new every day. Which construction do you think is best for this one? First one or second one? First one. So go ahead and do that. You got it? El profesor, or la profesora, if it's a female, hace que los estudiantes aprenden algo nuevo todos los días. And it's aprendan, right, in the subjunctive. And we're not even questioning why. We just know it's a formula. We're not overthinking this thing. So we like that construction for third parties that are named, right? It's really clear. But what if I want to say, the professor makes me learn something new every day? Which construction are you probably going to choose as an English speaker? Number 2, right? Anytime we're talking about me, te, nos, or os for European Spanish, that's easy. We're just going to pop it in. So we're going to have, well, I was going to give it to you, but go ahead. Translate that one. You got it? El profesor or la profesora me hace aprender algo nuevo todos los días. All right, so now I'm going to get into direct and indirect object pronouns and how they're used with this particular construction. And that's what I'm going to be translating him, her, them, or the formal you, usted. Now, take a look at this sentence in Spanish. They made him quit. That him there. Now, normally when we're dealing with verbs in Spanish, we're going to be working with either direct or indirect object pronouns, and we're not flipping them around. But with hacer, it's unusual. You may see this with an indirect object pronoun, le. Le hicieron renunciar. Or you may see it with a direct object pronoun, lo. Lo hicieron renunciar. I'm not a huge fan of Google Translate. It's okay. In this particular sentence, it preferred lo. Now, when I asked my wife, she's from Colombia originally, she preferred le. Which sounds most natural to a native speaker is going to depend where they're from, because this varies by region. It may even depend on the individual. How is the sentence structured? And even if someone liked lo there, they're like, I like lo hicieron renunciar. In a sentence like this, the professor makes them learn something every day, they may change to les. El profesor les hace aprender algo nuevo todos los días. Personally, I like les there. In fact, in much of the Spanish-speaking world, les is the better fit there for that particular sentence. Let's see what Google says. Remember, Google liked lo before. Let's see what it says here. It likes les. If we plug this into DeepL, which is another good translator, it also likes les. However, there are regions and countries where this would sound wrong. For example, in Argentinian Spanish, they really like direct object pronouns, so you may just see los. In fact, you probably will. So as a student of Spanish, how do you know which one to choose? Well, if you're moving to Argentina, you don't have to worry a lot about it. But if you're focusing on the Spanish from, say, Spain or Mexico or Colombia or the majority of Latin America, or you just want to speak general Spanish, you're going to have to concern yourself with this. So there is a tendency in those areas to use le and les to refer to people in this construction with hacer. First things first, let's look at this whole le and les. Why are they even using this? Well, according to one source that I found, it makes it clear that the pronoun is referring to a person rather than some inanimate object or abstract concept. It just makes it clear. And after I heard that explanation, I started reading some examples. I'm like, yeah, it really does. Let's take a look at some examples. Janet Blazer compartió con el medio C en el BC. ¿Cuáles fueron las razones por le hicieron mudarse a México? We have right in there that le is referring to her, the reasons that made her move to Mexico. Here's another example. Le hicieron pensar que su padre lo había abandonado y estaba enterrado en el sótano de la casa. And yes, that is a depressing headline, folks. They made him believe that his father had abandoned him, etc. See that le up there. So at this point in the video, you're like, okay, Paul, I got it. I'm going to be using le and les all the time for these things. No, you're not. Take a look at this example. Sus tacos lo hicieron pensar en grande y lo guiaron a su sueño americano. So his tacos made him think big, right? We're still talking about the same general tendencies in Spanish, the same Spanish, but here the author chose lo. And the author chose le in the other one. Is one more correct than the other? I think it comes down to what the author wanted. I mean, they can both be correct. If we, went and did a survey of native speakers and gave them both, it would be interesting to see what the percentages are and where those folks are from. Now, one tendency you will see is the use of le or les if the person is actually mentioned as an object in the sentence. Here's a good example. Colombiana le hizo creer a su esposo mexicano que en Santander comen carne de burro. That's kind of funny. So the Colombian made her Mexican husband believe that in Santander they eat donkey meat, burro meat. But see, we have le and we have him mentioned, see, a su esposo mexicano. He is the object of the sentence. So as you can see, there is a tendency in Spanish to use le and les a lot, but there are certain constructions that'll sound better with direct object pronouns, and it's really hard to explain why. I don't know if they're just simple or it's very clear who the object pronoun belongs to. It's, like I said, kind of hard to describe. Here's a good example. Her parents made her stay home. Right away, I'm just thinking la. Sus padres la hicieron quedarse en casa. I wasn't thinking le. But with the other ones, the teachers, making them all learn, les. A lot of these other ones, like made him quit, I like le. Could I use lo? Yeah, I guess I could go either way on some of them. Anyway, the point here is that there are just nuances of the language that you're just going to have to accept and deal with, and this is definitely one of them. Now, if you focused on the Spanish spoken and used in a particular area, that's going to make it easier because you're going to learn those nuances more quickly. And as far as the whole lo and le thing, if that's throwing you off, you can always just stick with that very first construction that I taught you way at the beginning of this long video, anytime you're talking about third parties. Sus padres hicieron que se quedara en casa. Her parents made her stay home. That was easy, right? Was it easy? Wasn't too bad. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, just do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hasta luego.